You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at M.A.Y.A.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 53 of M.A.Y.A, Understanding Objectivity IQ. I've been building on this, for quite a few episodes. So it was time to get to this because I think this is worthy conversation because it's a thing that can help you to put yourself in check, even when you don't know how to put yourself in check. So of course, we have to do our start to every show. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to another episode, of course. If you are a first-time listener or viewer, welcome to the show. I always say buckle up for safety, not because this isn't a safe space, but because sometimes it can be an unexpected bumpy ride. I may say something, you may say, I never really thought about that. Because remember, part of this podcast is we work on pulling back that veil of doubt and self-sabotage that plagues so many of us in our everyday life and keeps us from being that best version of ourselves every single day. Having that success and happiness we want to have in our lives every single day. The point of the podcast beyond that is honestly, we have to start working on our mental wellness, just like we work on our physical health, whether it be your actual, making sure there's no ailments that are setting you back. People put time to working out and getting to the body they want. It's so interesting how nobody wants to put time and energy into having the correct mental state, which actually helps you navigate all those other things until people get in dire straits. Well, if you're listening to M.A.Y.A, that means by now you are committed to getting to that best version of yourself. And if you're a returning listener or viewer, then you know what I say. You don't have to buckle up for safety because by now you really know how we do things here. I may say grab a pen, pad and pencil. You may want to jot some things down, kind of revisit them later, in the show. Grab your beverage of choice. I'm hydrating so that, you can be focused and get a nice quiet spot. Now, if you're listening to this actually live, then maybe you're listening at work or something else. I get it. You might go back and revisit it at some time. But either way, just make sure that we can take these next 60 minutes and be focused on you. Remember, the number one rule of M.A.Y.A is that you work on your pace. And at 53 episodes, if you're still back in 40 because that's the one where you had work to do, then it's okay to still be back in 40. But if not, I always enjoy when people participate and tune in every single Thursday for the show. Remember, this is an interactive show, and how you can be interactive is all you have to do is type something into the comment section, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, and I can click share it on the screen and I'll read it, as well as, so people are just listening, they can know what the comment is. And then of course you can read it as well. Always remember, if you're working at your own pace, how you can find episodes of M.A.Y.A. You can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A at M.A.Y.A.com. Remember, every episode has podcast companions, which means I'm going to add some supplemental things to the conversation I think that can help to give it more depth for you. Just go to M.A.Y.A.com, click on the podcast resource section, and then you can scroll down to episode 53. And there's a couple additional articles and websites I put in there that I think can really help to expand the conversation more. Also, you can listen and watch episodes of M.A.Y.A on my YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and search M.A.Y.A. M.A.Y.A Kai specifically. You're going to go past all this Japanese anime and voila, boom, there I am. And you can subscribe, like, and share the show. But if you happen to have a podcast platform of choice, I am not going to hold it against you. As long as you're listening and you're gaining something from the show, I'm all good with that. But remember, you can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audible, Spotify, Podmaster, all kinds of places. Just make sure you search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. You might have to throw in the M.A.Y.A for it to come up exactly, because my name is not as unique as I'd like to think it is. But you can always find me pretty much on any podcast platform. Lastly, I hope by now you've gotten social with me, that you're following me on Instagram and Twitter at M.A.Y.A_Kai, Facebook, M.A.Y.A Kai Presents. And believe it or not, I don't inundate you with too many things, even if you follow me on social media. I try to minimize how much information I put out there to people. And if I put something out there, I think it's worthy of thought and reflection. So don't worry, you won't have all these posts. If you're following me, I don't try to just keep putting things out there on a daily basis. Even though I may change some things and add more information, I try to make this something that's more consumable and not overwhelming. All right. So we've done all of those wonderful housekeeping things that we have to do, which means we have to do our normal toolbox, which I don't think it should be called a toolbox anymore. But you have your M.A.Y.A toolbox, where we work every week of putting something in your toolbox that you can use to help you to be the best version of your self, or getting to that happiness you seek in your everyday life. And what's the tool you take out every show that was already out before you tuned in? Your emotional intelligence. If you're new to the show, then what that means is your EI, as it can be referred to, is your ability to perceive, evaluate, and control your emotions, but more importantly, understand the emotions of others, to have good emotional intelligence and balance. So that's the tool that should be front and center every single day. This episode about your objectivity IQ clearly is the second most important. It might be a close first to emotional intelligence, because the more objective you are, the better your emotional intelligence is. So these two things are probably the two most important tools in your M.A.Y.A toolbox. And the saying that's been the overarching theme for the entire year for 2021 is that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, Aristotle. Even hundreds of years ago, there was a clear understanding that when you are connected with yourself, the rest of the world tends to unfold and make more sense to you. Aristotle knew it. So I figured, because we're working on the daily version of you, working on getting to know yourself and gaining that wisdom to help you to be the best version of yourself and to achieve the happiness that you seek, it was a proper saying to kind of go across every single episode. Now, if you listen to episodes and occasionally maybe, I make you think about something, you got a question, maybe you came across something in social media and you're like, hey, Maya, I have a question about something that I really kind of want to run by you and see what you think, or something in the episode might have made you say, I want a little bit more clarity. Well, guess what? You can always drop me a virtual letter. All you have to do is send me a virtual letter, AKA an email, to getinspired@mayakai.com and tell me what you're thinking about that episode. If it's got you reflecting, maybe you're navigating a difficult situation or you're feeling stuck, getting to that best version of yourself. Great way to say, hey, I want to throw a question at you. And I always tell people, if the question is good enough, it may be an entire episode, or I may take a collection of virtual letters and make an episode and address each one because it's worthy of it. And a lot of times I get good feedback about episodes, and I enjoy your feedback. You may just write me a virtual letter to say, I kind of want to say this about that episode, or what about this, or I disagree about that. It's all good and dandy. Because remember, one of the things you have to remember about M.A.Y.A, I am not your therapist. I am not your counselor. I am your mental wellness advocate. I want to put the conversation about mental wellness on the table. I'm not telling you what to do, how you should do it. I'm helping you to gain insight. Some people eventually say, maybe I need to go talk to somebody. There's a couple things here that I'm actually having a difficulty reconciling or resolving. Maybe it is time I go talk to somebody. So by no means is M.A.Y.A about advice or direction. It's purely about giving you insight into mental wellness. So you should be aware of mental health things that can affect you, just like there's physical health things. I'm here to help you navigate those waters and understand what's really important when it's all said and done. Okay, let's jump into episode 53, Understanding Objectivity IQ. The most important, if not second close to EI, that you put into your M.A.Y.A toolbox. This is a topic that I've been working on for a while because it's come up in several episodes, and I said eventually I was going to talk about it, and I was going to put together what would be kind of a range to make you understand what objectivity IQ is, because it kind of is like a M.A.Y.A-ism. It's something I just kind of created on my own. And I said, I think it's important to understand how you're using objectivity to have a gauge for when you're moving in the right direction versus you're moving in the wrong direction. And like I said, it's one of the most important toolbox tools you have. So it's important to know that your ability to be objective is going to help you to grow your emotional intelligence. So in this episode, we're going to discuss what exactly objectivity is. It's always important to put your frame and groundwork down, how it should be used, and how to gauge where you are in utilizing it properly, hence the objectivity IQ. So now that we've done some housekeeping things about that, let's jump flat into talking about it. Hey, what is exactly is objectivity? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If you Google it, this is a Webster's Dictionary online type definition. The quality or character of being objective, meaning you lack favoritism towards one side or another. It's freedom from bias. That is the key thing. So decisions and actions are based on fairness and being impartial. That within itself almost negates a lot of people because human nature is rooted in subjectivity. we often don't have the ability to be objective, to be able to see something outside of ourselves and not just from one perspective or point of view. So literally, objectivity is that quality or character of being objective, which is a lack of favoritism towards one side or another. It's freedom from bias, which means you're acting always. Objectivity is the act of fairness and being impartial. So now that we've been very clear about what objectivity is, or, having obviously the object to it, I did a lot of research on this because I knew how I felt, but I really wanted to flesh this out in a way that could really be helpful. Like, I wanted to give you legitimate tools so you could be like, okay, I can start using this like right now. The minute the episode ends, you can start working on your objectivity IQ. So I came across this great article on psychology.com. Obviously, I'm there a lot because I work in the field. I'm always reading different articles because even as a counselor / therapist, I'm working on the best version of myself as well every day. I can't be telling you to do something if I'm not doing it. And in fact, every episode I feel like I do with people, I feel like it really gives me more insight because I dig deeper into the conversation to make sure I can give you a good conversation. So there's this great article on psychology.com by an author of a book called The Objective Leader: How to Leverage the Power of Seeing Things as They Are. Her name is Elizabeth R. Thornton. I'm going to check the book out because just the pieces that were shared on psychology.com, which I'm basing this whole section after, to me, it talks about certain principles of objectivity and how they can help you think smarter. And she made a statement that I feel is key, that I feel is absolutely key when you talk about objectivity. What Elizabeth R. Thornton said in her book, and it leads within the article: to transform unproductive mental models, you must change your mind. And some people might say that feels very redundant. And in a way it is. But what's key about what she's saying here is the mental models piece. That's the language in this statement that I like. Mental models literally refers to actions, behaviors, thoughts, and feelings that are based on past experiences, and it shapes the way that you think. So do you think objectively or do you think subjectively, or are you somewhere in the middle? So if you grew up in a situation that didn't really facilitate thinking objectively about things, or if you're a person who always falls back in your emotions, then chances are your mental model is rooted more so in emotion and not necessarily in being objective. So the mental models piece of this was so important. And flat out, like she said, it all takes place in the mind. So to transform unproductive mental models means behaviors and thoughts that you have used your entire life. You must change your mind, which means you have to change the way you think about things in order to have a shift in your mental models and being more objective. It's a great article. I do believe that I shared it on M.A.Y.A.com and podcast resources. I was adding so many things to this. I was coming across great resources. If not, I'll make sure I share it because I personally think the book is worthy of, I'm going to go buy it and start to read it because she said a lot of things that I really liked. Welcome to the show, James E. Quinn Campbell Jr. Thank you. Very wise words from her. Like I said, when I used her article to kind of form out this part of the show, this part alone made me feel like her book is worthy of reading just based on some of the things that she shared. So let's get into these 3 principles that she discusses throughout her book, but that were very specifically shared in the article. The first principle that she talked about, and I said, there you go. She's talking in a language, by the way, because she's looked at as an objective leader, but she's speaking in a language that to me, every single person can understand. Her first principle literally was that there will always be situations that we don't like. Okay, that's just shooting straight from the hip. You are always going to maybe potentially be in a situation that doesn't resonate with you. Before it even truly unfolds, you may know exactly what the outcome might be. So going into it, understanding that this is not a situation that may be advantageous for me, might be that red flag that, am I going to be subjective in how I look at the outcome? Or can I be objective in how I look at the outcome? It's easy to think and feel if something can go wrong, it probably will. I hate to say it. It's human nature to kind of err on that negativity. These are the situations can always be easier to navigate, to be honest, and to accept because we anticipate there's going to be issues or complications. So say something's about to, as people say, pop off, and you're like, I already know this is going to go sideways. Pump your brakes. Why is it going to go sideways? Is it because it doesn't fall into your favor? Because remember, if things don't tend to fall into our favor, we tend to be not objective about it. Because why should I really take the energy to find any sense of credence that this really could be the outcome that's appropriate, though it's not advantageous for me? But when things happen that we don't expect or anticipate, that's where it gets real complicated. And often it's easy to start blaming others, make a mountain out of a molehill, or just fall into self-deprecating behavior because we didn't expect a certain outcome. So hence our first reaction is to be negative and subjective. And as many people say, be in our feelings about a situation. And this is where they lose their ability to be objective because the element of surprise is often something people don't like unless it's a good surprise. Nobody likes a bad surprise, but bad surprises or unexpected situations are part of life. And that's the first step in being objective, is that she just said in this first principle, there will be situations that we don't like, whether we know about the outcome or not. And that's important to already earmark when you're working on your objectivity, is to accept, I don't exactly know how this might turn out, but I'm going to be ready for the outcome and I will move accordingly. So her first principle to me was golden. Let's have a real talk time. Our first one of the show. And this is honesty. This is part of that journey of being objective. Honesty is the source of where everything originates from. Because if you can't be honest with yourself about something that doesn't sit well with you and why it doesn't, then this is going to be a moot point most of the time. Because you trying to get to being objective, if you're lying to you, how could you possibly find any honesty for others? But let's have a real talk time moment as we kind of process that first principle. How often do you assess situations for what they really are? Or do you step back and think about the risk and benefits of something before they unfold? Whether you feel, think, or know the outcome. And that's interesting because for unexpected situations, let's say everything is rolling around and it seems okay. And then all of a sudden there's a hiccup in the situation that you didn't anticipate. For instance, a good example could be when you're getting to know new people, or say you're dating or make new friends. You never begin with the thought that they will go sideways, right? You kind of think, well, this is going to be a good experience and everything is going to be okay. Positive. But there are risks and benefits to everything. The benefits of a good relationship, whether it be romantic or platonic or work, is that there are things that help you to grow. They're advantageous. They're good for you. But there's always a risk in every relationship that exists that you're going to hit a snag in the relationship. And the question is, how big is the snag and what type of risk does the snag create? Is it something that really, truly breaks you down as a person and compromises you emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, spiritually? The list goes on. All those domains we talk about that mental wellness overarches. Is the risk in that situation that grave, or is it more of a learning or a teaching moment that can help you to grow because maybe all of a sudden you found out something about yourself that you didn't know? So ask yourself, how often do you assess situations for what they really are? Step back from your feelings and consider, well, there's risks and benefits to everything. We just tend to think more about benefits because things that are good are supposed to be laden with benefits and not risk. But anything worth having may come with a risk. No one invests money and makes it off a simple risk. It's the high risk things that yield outcomes. And investors will tell you, you have to have a certain resolve and stomach to be an investor because the risk you have to take, you're expecting the outcome, the yield to be higher. But if you're wrong, you have to keep in the front of your mind, I knew there was a calculated risk to this. I was just hoping that wasn't going to be the outcome. And it doesn't have to turn into, I'm a bad investor. I'm stupid. I never should have done that. No, some risks are worth taking. You just have to make sure that they are. So when you take risk, are you only thinking about the benefit, but not what comes with those benefits of what it might yield a certain amount of risk? And are you prepared for it? And that's where objectivity has to step in, is like, am I really prepared for the risk that it may take to yield the benefit that I want of something? It may mean stepping out your comfort zone. It may mean entertaining a new idea, a thought process that isn't part of who you are. These are the things you have to think about when you're challenged. So just a real talk is, how often do you really assess situations for what they are? Did you look at the risk as much as you looked at the benefits of things, whether it be relationships, financial endeavors, work, whatever? Ask yourself, what is the benefit of me doing this? What is the risk of me doing this? Is the risk too high? Am I willing to take that risk? Do I feel the benefit is really worth the risk? Those are things that you should ask yourself. So those can be difficult. Let's jump into another one of the principles that was discussed in the article that I think was absolutely fantastic by Elizabeth R. Horton. So her second principle stated that people are fundamentally the same, but are unique. And I said, you know something? This is like absolutely spot on. And you might say, well, Maya, how is it spot on? Think about this. When you think about basic wants and needs, we are fundamentally the same in the fact that we have similar needs like food, shelter, water, love, and belonging. I'll be all, get into psychological, theory and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's a pecking order to how things need to be fulfilled, where needs always supersede wants, because when needs are missing, wants are rarely ever truly attained. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, we all need food, water, air, shelter, love, belonging. Those are basic needs. And eventually the wants get into self-actualization and self-esteem when lower things are accomplished. But here's what's interesting. But let's talk about it really more objectively, because we all have the same needs, basically. It's the wants that sometimes obviously can differentiate. But here's where the unique piece comes in, and people need to gain insight when you're dealing with people. I can't remember who said it. I think it was Michael Carson said it maybe 2 or 3 episodes. Like, you must understand the character of the person that you're dealing with before you let yourself get all bent out of shape. Because if you know who you're dealing with, to expect anything more than what they are is setting yourself up for failure, and purely you're not being objective. And you're putting yourself in a very risky situation that probably is not going to yield the benefit that you're hoping that it's going to. But let's talk about the unique piece objectively. We all have needs and wants, and those needs and wants are very specific and make you unique. We tend to build beyond basic needs and wants to a higher level of needs and wants based on our experiences. Thus, your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors are influenced, are shaped accordingly by your environment or the world that you're in. So everyone has unique things that they need to feel happy, wanted, needed, desired. And that's what you have to understand when you're thinking objectively, is that we may want something or need something the same, but my unique experience may call for something a bit different than what yours does. And what's important about being objective is having the ability to respect somebody's uniqueness in a situation, especially when it's different than yours. Somebody may be more free-minded, outgoing, laid back, and not as rigid as you are. It doesn't make them any less of a person or not even a good person. It just means, for instance, some people may say, I'm not a drinker. Somebody else may say, I drink. Does that mean the person who doesn't drink is a better person than the person who does? Someone may say, I don't believe in doing, sex before marriage. I'm just totally throwing something out there. And someone else may say, well, I feel it's important to explore that dimension in a relationship with someone to make sure that we're truly compatible. Is either person wrong? We all have unique perspectives that shape who we are. And when you pair yourself up with people, especially when you talk about, remember we talked about high and low level relationships, the value of them. It's important to understand where you match up with people when it comes to values, core values. That conversation comes up a lot. I think in my last 2 or 3 episodes, I haven't said the word core values, but I know I've talked about high value and low value relationships. So it's important that you understand the uniqueness of someone in a situation to be able to really employ good objectivity. I just came to realize this person is uniquely different than me this way. And this might be why this outcome is like this, or why this bothers me, because we don't align up the same way. That uniqueness is a piece that people often can lose sight of. And let's talk about the final principle that was discussed in the article by Elizabeth Thornton. Like I said, I really want people to check out her book, because I know nothing about it, but I'm just saying these 3 principles that she shared to me were enough to make me say, Elizabeth R. Thornton, you're an objective leader, and there must be something about you that's really worth exploring a bit more. So check out her book, Objective Leader: How to Leverage the Power of Seeing Things as They Are. And to me, these 3 principles are spot on. And the book goes even deeper into it. Her articles go a little deeper. It's totally worth you exploring. Let's talk about the third and final principle that I think is really important that she talked about. And to me, They're equally yoked. I think these all work in concert with each other. We cannot always control the results of our actions, AKA, we got to rethink failure. This was the part that I feel like, though they're equally yoked, this is probably the one that people would struggle with the most, because failure is something within our respective society that is taboo. We're all supposed to strive to only be successful. We always will lie and say, well, there's such a thing as perfect, and there's not. But yet we always want to make people think that if they're anything less than perfect, now there's something wrong with you. And everybody's less than perfect in some way. So we pick and choose the things that we want to assert value to. But success is one of those conversations within society that anything less than success is just mediocre. But the question is, what does success exactly look like? And if it happens to have any lining of failure to it, that means you were building up to it. And only people who really find balance and understand that failure is something that lends to greater success, because it gives you something as a point of reference to learn from. And I wish we would tell small children that and not make them think that striving towards perfection out the gates is what it's about. No, failure is a thing that makes you figure out, I don't like the way that feels. What did I do wrong? How can I do it better to achieve the outcome that I'm looking for? So when we talk about this in a greater context, as I said before, productivity is highly correlated with success. And to be honest, not necessarily. You could be the most productive person in the world, and all your productivity may not get you to the level of success that you think is appropriate. But what people have to understand is what needs to be done to get an anticipated outcome to be positive is where people generally struggle, because if they get an outcome that's different than what they expected, then they fell short of their expectations. See, we have been programmed or socialized, so to speak, to value ourselves and others, for that fact, based on performance and achievement, not failure. So high value people are people that are deemed to be performance and achievement, latent. And if someone fails to be that, then we discount them and say they are a failure. When in actuality, they may just be at a different stage of building towards their success. But if you beat a person down enough, they may never get there because they believe their shortcomings could never be anything more than what they've been, when we know that not to be true. What it truly means for us to desire often means for most people is, I need to control the end result. But we know in reality, failure often leads to greater success only if you identify and can see what went wrong objectively. So you have to step out of your subjective assumptions and look at reality and facts of the situation. And a lot of people struggle with that, because if the outcome wasn't what we expected it to be, and if it was less than productive or whatever the case may be, we instantly go, oh, that's just, it went wrong because of this. Well, okay, you need to take away the whole deprecating thing that people often can be self-deprecating, and it's my fault, it didn't work, I didn't do this. The only time I honestly feel that you should legitimately probably give yourself a hard time about something is if you legitimately didn't put in the work, if you know you didn't give 100%, if you know you didn't put your best foot forward and then you failed, then you can be fully accountable for why that was the outcome. But if you felt you gave 100% and you still didn't achieve the outcome you wanted, opposed to assuming that it's impossible or improbable, stop and say, why did I not achieve the outcome? Did I have the correct resources in places? Did I give 100%? Did I have actually the tools and the skills to achieve something? Or did I walk into something assuming it was just going to happen because I put the work in? Sometimes putting the work in doesn't yield the outcome that you want. Failure might just be imminent, only because you can go back, fix it, do it better, and often achieve the outcome that you want. And this is why you have to be objective, especially with rethinking failure. It isn't an endpoint. It's just a point in the journey. But so many times, failure is socialized, and we're programmed to believe that's not the case. And it is. All right, everybody, let's take a break, because we're about halfway through the show almost. And when we come back, let's expand this conversation to how we can become more objective in our thinking, even when you're emotionally invested, because, we're talking about removing emotions, a big part of being able to be objective. And then let's discuss how you can gauge your objectivity IQ. I put together that means to help you figure out where you are with truly being objective in your life. You're tuned into My Ambition, Your Ambition. This is episode 53, Understanding the Objective IQ. That's what it's all about. Okay, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back.
Please stop and listen because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
Stepping out of bed. It's easy to take for granted. You work, eat, play, sleep, and get out of bed the next morning. Seems simple. But if you're one of 25 million individuals in the United States living with major depression, sleep isn't always so easy. Neither is navigating your daily life, free of guilt or hopelessness, or having the ability to enjoy time out with friends, make simple decisions, enjoy hobbies, or go to work. Major depression is the leading cause of disability across the United States, and without treatment, the frequency and severity of symptoms tend to increase over time. However, there is hope. Major depression is treatable, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Today, there are a variety of treatment options to choose from. The key is to get an evaluation and find a treatment plan that is right for you. Free education, information, and support programs are available. You are not alone. We can help.
It's okay to think you're in a toxic relationship with the world right now.
It's okay to feel like your world is changing.
It's okay if it's hard to find the words to express how you feel.
It's okay to feel like you just want to become someone else.
It's okay if you're panicking over an inability to control your life right now.
It's okay to have trouble maintaining your normal routine while staying home.
It's okay if you're feeling more cynical than usual.
It's okay if you want to curse more than you usually do.
It's okay to wear your favorite tank top several days in a row.
It's okay to miss your job.
It's okay to just stay quiet.
It's okay to be depressed.
It's okay to talk to your cats like they understand what you're saying.
It's okay not to feel the most fabulous right now.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.
All right, everybody, welcome back to M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, episode 53, Understanding Objectivity IQ. I really like that commercial that was done by M.A.Y.A about it's okay to not be okay. And it takes different actors and clips from their shows to kind of express what a lot of people feel right now going through COVID-19. And it's not, everyone thought 2021 was going to roll around. It was going to magically go away. And I'm like, no, that's a sense of false hope that we're giving to people. And here we are still in the midst of it. So making those mental adjustments and knowing there's days where sometimes you're just not okay. It's okay to not be okay. And it doesn't make you any less than who you are. So I definitely enjoy that commercial. So let's get back to Understanding objectivity IQ. And I said, we're going to talk about some key behaviors to help you to start consciously using it. Also, what do you do when you're really emotionally laden and things and it affects your objectivity? And then I'm going to tell you exactly how to figure out where you are, how to gauge it. So some key behaviors that you need to start consciously utilizing to be more objective in your thinking. So this means this is the action point. These are things that, to me, I don't think they're really that difficult if you're going to embrace the idea that you're ready to shift and make change. You're ready to change those mental models that Elizabeth R. Thornton talked about in her objectivity book. So the first one is pretty straightforward. 1, begin to reflect on additional possibilities and outcome for a situation. So, I need for you to be able to step back and truly consider why something might have happened. Were there variables out of your control? Was someone else driving the situation or had more control? Was the outcome never going to be truly advantageous for you? Do you want, did you go into something 100% or were you kind of half-ass about it, but you expected 100% result? Ask yourself, am I being negative or refusing to accept what I think may not be what I want it to be because I just don't want to align myself with being objective? You have to ask yourself these questions. So remember, variables matter in every situation. Let's be honest. If you're not fully in control of something, then chances are outcomes may not be advantageous for you. How many times we talked about people being in relationships with somebody, whether it be at work, and you feel like something's going to happen and it's not going to work to your advantage because you're not the person driving that situation. When you already identify that you're not the person driving that situation, you already know the chances are it won't be the outcome that you want. So opposed to being negative about it and allowing it to consume you, you have to realize, I knew the outcome wasn't going to be exactly what I wanted because I wasn't the person really facilitating this. Now, if you're the person facilitating it and it didn't have the outcome you want, then you step back and say, what happened that it didn't kind of pan out the way I thought? But you got to ask this question dealing in fact and reality, not in some bubble. And a lot of people have a hard time with dealing in facts and reality, especially if it doesn't align with what they want or what they think or feel how things should be. So that's a key thing. Begin to reflect on, additional possibilities and outcomes for a situation. This could have happened if this, it was always a possibility this was going to happen because this was in play. We were hoping it wasn't going to go that direction, but we already knew that was going to be a possible outcome of the situation. So if there's always multiple outcomes to anything, to tell you the truth. But being able to be honest with yourself that the outcome that didn't work the way you wanted it to, it was always possible that was going to be the case. The second thing that I want you to start reflecting on is that be mindful and avoid subjective assumptions, especially when they are negative. I can't begin to tell you, and there's a person I know, and it literally drives me crazy, and it's someone that I'm close to. And I've told them about this several times, and they choose to employ their subjective thinking, especially negative. If they have come to not like someone, every time there's an interaction with that person, they're going to consider the worst case scenario, because in their mind and their emotional thinking, this person is going to do this, even when they're making the assumptions not based on fact. Like this person was adamant, I know this person did this. And I said, based on what? What facts are you working from? I said, tell me something that's factual, or even in the reality of the situation as it happened, that makes you come to that conclusion. And they couldn't tell me anything. I said, it sounds like to me you're being very subjective and you're basing it on that person you already said numerous times gets on your nerves and you really don't like them. So then you're putting outcomes to situations that don't exist the way they are. And of course, they got very flustered with me. And I said, well, I'm just being honest with you. I said, you keep asserting things into the conversation that are not fact-based to come out with a decision or an outcome of how to deal with this person. I said, how about you just not deal with that person if you don't have to, because you can't deal with them objectively? Because that's a close relationship I had with somebody. It wasn't like we're going to terminate our relationship because I was honest. And I'll be honest, there was no change in that person's thinking. But I've come to understand that is how that person operates anytime they deal with someone they don't like or they feel there's been some transgression against them. They instantly don't feel that person can do anything right, or everything they do is with an ill intention, even if it's not based in fact. Knowing the character of the person that you're dealing with is so important. So you stop expecting more. So You have to ask yourself when you talk about assumptions, if it actually doesn't matter what the outcome is, if you're going to have the same thought pattern no matter what, because you're just dealing in negative assumptions, then I'm going to tell you something. You're aligning negative thoughts with your feelings, which are not based in fact, which is automatically sabotaging your ability to be objective. Bottom line. If you absolutely refuse to step back and can't look at the person you're dealing with and understand your emotion is driving your behavior, then you're going to really struggle with being objective, because one of the biggest things you're going to find about talking about how to gauge your IQ is what you do with emotion is one of the most important things. And a third thing I'd like for you to think about is, can you be open-minded to other people's point of view while truly understanding your own? So when you walk into a situation that you feel compromises you in any way, shape, or form, the first thing I need you to do is to put on your POV glasses, start with your own, and say, what is my point of view of this? How do I see this situation? Why do I see it this way? Who are the key players in the situation? And are those key players people that are going to elicit a certain emotional response from me, which means I'm instantly probably going to be super subjective because of my relationship with them? Because we all know, and this is key, this will probably be the most important part of this entire podcast today. Human nature is driven by processing information based on personal experience. Let me say that again. Human nature, hence AKA decision making, is driven by processing information based on personal experience / past experiences. We all know that people will draw conclusions often by how we perceive the information more so than how it really is. And we will fill the blanks in situations with those assertions. It's your first tendency. We're trained to do that. So we're trained to base our decisions on subjective actions, which is emotion. And hence we often can't evaluate the process. So this is why I hate to say this, I never tell people to disregard or check your emotions, but you have to at times. It's so important to. I would tell you, if you happen to be a sci-fi person, and I hope you're not going to say, oh, I didn't watch that, because people always have to be absolute in their thinking. So I watched Star Trek as a kid and loved it. And obviously I saw Star Wars, and I'm very team Star Wars, love it. But I also like Star Trek and many of the spinoffs, because Star Trek wasn't truly based on movies. It was a sitcom on TV that evolved into movies, where Star Wars was all about movies. So I see them in two different veins. So I've liked both. But if you think about the ideal of logic, the conversation or the character of Dr. Spock should come into mind for you. He was Vulcan, and Vulcans believed in making decisions based on logic and not emotion, and felt you had to remove emotion to be able to truly make a decision accurately, because emotions are based on past experiences, and that experience may not be appropriate to be applied to the situation, though don't get me wrong. Implicit and explicit bias has a place and a purpose only when you use them objectively. So if you think about Spock saying, he would always look at humans and say, you're too emotional. And those episodes of Star Trek, if you watch, where emotion would engage him, he would find a way to pull himself back and to redirect. But also, as he learned to manage his emotions, he grew as an individual and realized in dealing with humans who were poor in logic to him, that emotion had a place. It just couldn't be the driver when you're being a decision maker. So we hear this narrative all the time about how logic should drive your decisions and be objective, but you have to remove the emotional piece that clouds your judgment. Robert, welcome. He said aloha earlier. He was mixed. Yes, he was. Yes. And it's funny because that narrative carries throughout many of the episodes, specifically with Star Trek, that he was human and he was Vulcan. But here's what's interesting. He identified as Vulcan. He didn't want any parts of all that human stuff. That was a funny thing. But you're right. Brandy Harris, welcome to the show. Yes, critical reasoning, logic. You have to remove the emotion away. And that's one of the most complicated things you'll ever do, because guess what? Being human, part of what makes us probably more unique than any other creature that walks the face of the earth is the depth and the breadth of our emotion. It's beautiful, but it also can be debilitating if you're not careful. So logic is what rules objectivity, and understanding your own emotional state and where you are in your emotional intelligence is paramount if you're ever going to really be successful in understanding somebody else's point of view, because you first must understand yours before you can gather someone else's. So those are 3 things that you can start to work on in regards to getting better at your objectivity. So let's go ahead and put our stuff in the toolbox. Let's do it. Let's go. Okay, Maya, how can I legitimately use this as a tool? You told me some things to keep in mind, but how can I kind of gauge where my actual IQ is to know which one of those areas I need to work on more? So how can you gauge your objectivity? I put it simple: high, medium, or low, opposed to giving it a number scale. Granted, to me, there's a blending to these levels, because as you're growing, you may shed one trait to pick up another trait, but you're not fully advancing to that next level. So even within these levels, there's going to be those gray areas where there's that one part you say, yeah, my emotions still drive me. I'm still working on it. I'm learning how to check it though. But you know what? Hey, I'm getting there. So I'm getting better at it. So let's start from low and work our way to high. So if your objectivity IQ is low, this means that you're a highly emotional person. You have high emotional responses to people and situations. You're in your feelings, so to speak. That makes you feel a certain way. Something hits you and instantly emotion overwhelms you and often makes you react versus responding. You've already done something before you could think it through. You just acted on the emotion. So subjectivity is the only perspective that you have. You refuse to see another person's point of view. So let's say a situation happens between you and a person, and the outcome was not a desired outcome. And the person explains, that wasn't my intention. That's not how I thought this was going to go. When I said this or did this, this is what I thought was going to happen. I didn't realize it was going to impact you or bother you that way. It was never my intention. A low objectivity IQ person can't hear it, don't want to see it, don't want to be bothered with it, because they feel like whatever you did, you intentionally did it with a malice intent, and you did not know what you were not doing. Your intention is exactly what it is. They refuse to deal in fact or reality that does not align with their own bottom line. So that means that there's no accountability for behavior or actions. They feel like you set me off, I acted out, and if you hadn't done this, I would have did that, and nothing else matters. That's just how they go. Very low on the objectivity IQ scale. That right there is a hot mess. And just pulling each one of those apart to be able to move to the next level is going to take some work. And like I said, you may move from one level to the next and straddle. So I would tell you the first thing that you really have to do in that low end of the IQ scale in regards to objectivity is you have to work on how emotional you are. Until you can pull back the emotion that drives you, you won't be able to be accountable in your actions. You won't be able to see somebody else's point of view because you may be blinded by anger, fear, hurt, disappointment, and it drives your decisions and your behaviors. So being able to pull your emotion in line, dig down and find your inner Vulcan, I'm sure we all have it there, to be able to make that step to moving up the level. Once you can control your emotion better, you raise your emotional intelligence. Other things tend to fall in line because you won't let it drive you. Let's talk about that mid-range, that middle IQ. This is where you acknowledge your emotions and you try to put them in check. So for instance, you're having an exchange with somebody and you're getting warm and you can feel the irritability, the agitation, and the anger rising. This is where you say, I'm about to snap off. Let me check myself. I'll get back to you on this. I'm going to get back to you on this because this is really eliciting an emotion from me that I don't want to have. And I'm kind of confused why it's happening right now. Or maybe you know why something's rubbing you the wrong way. So you need to go ahead and regroup, put your emotions in timeout and come back when you can be more rational and not react, but respond instead. So the big step moving into that medium range for your objectivity IQ is definitely acknowledging your emotions, acknowledging they're real. Remember I told you one of my MA.A.isms was that you can emotional marinate for a minute, sit in it, be in the moment, acknowledge why something made you angry. And then I need you to get about it. That's it. You acknowledge it. You can pout, you can cry, whatever it is you do when you're angry. And I need you not in front of somebody else that's not being responsible. And then I need you to come back and say, okay, I allowed myself to experience that anger, because I have a right to experience it. Even if it pulled that emotion from you, you have a right to experience. You got to ask yourself why, though, you're experiencing the emotion. And then you need to put it in check. It can't keep driving the narrative for that situation. The second thing is, once you can check the emotion, you become more rational with your thinking. You realize there may be other factors or facts in play that need to be considered. So I interpreted what you said to mean this, but after talking to you, you explained to me that's not what you meant. We know that people can say things, and it's easy. We can interpret words any way we want to. That's why words can be some of the strongest weapons you can wield. Seriously. And a lot of times people like say, oh, I'm keeping it 100, or no, okay, but not if you're being offensive. You can express yourself without being offensive to others. Seriously. So what you have to step back and say, now that I've talked with this person, they've explained what they said and what they meant, and I misinterpreted it. Can I sit with that and be okay? Or does that emotion keep pulling at me? But a big step forward and moving from that low to that medium is at least you're willing to consider the other point of view. And lastly, it's about accountability. You know, if you struggle, but you're working on prioritizing a point of view you have, doesn't mean you subscribe to blame game knowingly. So you may say, you know something? Okay, you've now told me what you meant when you said it. It still doesn't sit right with me, but I can understand where you're coming from because the facts are starting to fall in line. I'm going to take accountability for the way I reacted to you was rude or disrespectful. I felt that was a situation and I reacted this way, and that's not the way I wanted to respond. Understanding your accountability. So if someone elicits a poor behavior from you, that's because you allowed them to elicit a poor behavior from you. Part of understanding your power is how much power you give to other people to control your emotions. And this is when you're emotionally invested, people can do that to you. They can get the best of you. Are you getting the best of me? Great song, by the way, about the Foo Fighters. The best of you. Seriously. It's interesting. When people can elicit a strong emotion from you, you got to ask yourself, why can they get to me like that? What is it about this person or this situation that's getting the best of me and making me react opposed to respond? It's that accountability for the thoughts and the actions that you're having when you know you've really moved into that mid-range. That's kind of a scope when you talk about the mid. But let's talk about when you're functioning at a high IQ for objectivity. This is when there's a decreased emotional response. People start popping off and you just look at them. And you're going to yourself, I don't understand why they're behaving like this. Okay, no, doesn't mean there's not a transgression, by the way. Doesn't mean you're not necessarily wrong. You haven't done something to elicit the response from them that you're getting. But you go, and you choose not to engage them back with negativity. You step back and say, okay, maybe I might have done something that could have done this. You may have to ask if you've done something because you may not know. Like I said, remember, we're all similar by design with needs and wants, but it's our unique experiences that separate us. And that person's unique experience may be why they're responding to you the way that they are. So by deciding to step back and to check your emotions and put it in timeout and not responding with anger because you were given anger is important, because now too, you're being more rational in your thinking. You're acknowledging that you're going to check your subjectivity and be like, I could respond back because we're just having an argument and we both feel we're right. There could be some facts and reality in both of your perspectives, but being able to meet that person in the middle is where you've grown emotionally with your emotional intelligence. So that's that rational thinking. And 3, it's when you're able to say what I just said. Multiple points of view does not mean you're going to prioritize yours over somebody else's and think you're absolutely 100% correct. You may say there's something in this situation that may warrant the response that I got. Doesn't mean it had to be all that it was, or the outcome might be what it is. But I'm going to step back. I'm going to listen to what they have to say and understand, okay, you're telling me this, but the outcome was this. Maybe it truly was just a misunderstanding and not a malicious act. But when you deal from a place of subjectivity, all you can think of is something is a malicious act or outcome. That person is a bad person because it didn't align with what you wanted to happen, or you're hurt, or you feel wounded. And I understand when we seek to protect ourselves, our first defense mechanism is to be subjective and to absolutely only deal in facts in a reality that aligns with what we want them to be, not what maybe they actually are. So that's the 3 ways you can figure out where you are with your objectivity. That's how I figured it's a low, it's a low, medium, high scale, but there's gray areas as you're growing. But the growth point in each one of those areas is your emotional intelligence is key. How you choose to respond to something mentally, emotionally, your behavior, your actions. And then when you are able to really put your subjective thinking in check, because now your emotions in check, then you're actually able to have a stronger accountability for your emotion and your actions. And you can deal in fact and reality, not because it aligns with what you want it to be, but because of what it is, because you've opened your mind to see, okay, there was a possibility this could be a different outcome, or this is not what I wanted, but not for the reasons that I thought. That's objectivity. And you move through it as you learn to have better emotional intelligence. Like I said, these two things legitimately go hand in hand. Like I said, your objectivity IQ is finding your inner Vulcan, and can you work in logic, and can you learn when to put your emotions in timeout when they're about to get the best of you and make you react versus respond. But one last thing to put on the table. What happens when you are emotionally invested in something? I'm going to tell you something. This is where people tend to get the best of us, when it's a high value relationship. So we're emotionally invested, because that's where we tend to be able to not be as logical as we want to be, because we are wrapped in this emotion with this person or the situation that we've invested in. So here's a couple things I want you to think specifically about when you're emotionally invested. One, I want you to realize your objectivity limits. So if you're dealing with a person that drives strong emotion from you, the first thing I need to tell yourself is, I'm going to struggle with objectivity because of this person, because of the emotional hold on me, because I'm not doing my best efforts at self-advocacy, because of the emotional wrapping I have with this person. A lot of times you see this in situation with parents and children. I've seen situations where some adult children are absolutely horrendous to their parents. And the parents will allow the emotional disregard and disrespect to exist because that relationship is so important to them. And or they have grandchildren and they are then used as a pun. And they if I shut you down, if I address my emotions, then you're going to take away the thing that I enjoy and I love. So hence they are reduced to having to not respond because of the cost they feel if they truly are objective in how they deal with this person. So that's two. Finding your emotional Achilles heel. Why does this person have the actual emotional hold on me? Why is their control so strong? And can I do something about it? Or am I willing to pay the price that it takes to not allow myself to be reduced to emotional rubble because this person has so much control over the relationship? Then gather a brain trust, people you can bounce what you are thinking off of. But the thing about having a brain trust, like a legitimate circle of friends or family that you can talk to, is when they're honest with you about the situation, if you're not going to heed what they're saying or take it into consideration, then you're really wasting your time. Most people legitimately only want their brain trust to validate what they know to be fact. It doesn't mean they plan on taking action. But if you're willing to engage people enough to ask them and talk about your situation, but not do anything about it, this Achilles heel for you is absolutely debilitating. And you've got some work to do. But remember, you're dealing with people and their character. So if the person who has so much control over you has no insight and they're low on their emotional intelligence or they're low on the objectivity IQ, you're in a world of hurt because of the control they have over you. And that's where that check your personality type is big. Understand who you're working with. And more importantly, are you a people pleaser? So you never can really address issues. You can never self-advocate because it's more important for other people to be happy versus your happiness. Or are you a passive aggressive? It's interesting. Or are you just passive? So knowing your personality type will really tell you how you're going to navigate your objectivity IQ, because if you don't have the courage to step forth and to address your emotions and to check them and think logically, then chances are you're always going to hover somewhere low to medium. Because understanding who you are and how you are going to truly act is the most important thing in this entire thing. But let me tell you something, and this is pure honesty. This would be my final thought in this. Don't fool yourself. We are subjective creatures by nature. It's pretty much human nature that at any time we may feel that we overreact or to a situation, or we judge people, or situations are too quickly or unfairly, the way it goes against what we want. It's our type of reactionary behavior and decision-making that comes at a high cost. And it's that cost that may involve losing relationships, money, and other things. And this is where people really struggle, that the cost that may come with being objective may be greater than what they're willing to spend to get to being happy or the best version of themselves. So they suffer in silence. They stay in this emotional rubble, because at least in this emotional rubble, they get to keep this faulty relationship, and this maybe emotional disregard at work. You make the money, but you're miserable, but the pay is good. There's all these reasons that we will make to lower our objectivity IQ, because we feel obviously the benefit of whatever is challenging is worth the risk of our happiness. And until you get to a point that you feel that your happiness and to really get to that best version of you should not be compromised because of the character of others, and you're willing to take that risk to achieve that happiness, your objectivity IQ is going to probably be in a different, wavering place for a while. And it's not easy. This is not an easy feat by any stretch of the imagination. And nor do I want you to think I'm trying to sell it to you like it's one, because it's not. This is real work right here. This is heavy lifting. The question is, if you feel you can't do it alone, then this is when I feel like you should get a counselor or a therapist. Make maybe your brain trust somebody outside of yourself who can really help you be that mental trainer that you need to help you find the desired person you want to be mentally and emotionally, and then help you to do those exercises that will help you to get there with the form that will create that outcome. Because it's often harder to do it on your own. But if you have a team, that brain trust, who could be your counselor or therapist, you may get a better result than what you have than if you do it on your own. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode of M.A.Y.A, episode 53, Understanding Objectivity IQ. Of course, the whole purpose of this podcast is to help you to identify your ambitions and harness that motivation to help you acquire the success and satisfaction you seek in your everyday life. Always remember that you can find episodes of M.A.Y.A in so many places. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audible, Spotify. All you have to do is search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and you might have to do the M.A.Y.A to find it, because M.A.Y.A is not necessarily common, but there's other things out there that use M.A.Y.A. So you can find all those platforms. You just may have to search it as M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. But I would tell you, the easy thing to do, if you're not going to use your podcast platform of choice, which, by the way, you should like, subscribe, and share, then just go to MAYAAkai.com, and then you can easily find all the episodes there. Remember, with every episode, there are podcast companions. So for this episode 53, go to MAYAAkai.com, click on the podcast resource tab, and just scroll down. It's right there at the top. There's some additional things I've added that I think can be helpful for you and kind of working towards this. I'll make sure that article by Elizabeth R. Thornton's up there, her book about objectivity, I'm going to go buy it, because her 3 principles that I shared to me are spot on, and they can only get better by reading the book that fleshes it out more. But her article on psychology.com definitely is the start to what is definitely good information. But make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's also another way that you can listen to the show. So subscribe, like, and share it, and get social with me. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Maya_Akai, or you can find me on Facebook at Maya Kai Presents. That's all the ways you can connect with the show. All right, buddy, that's it this week. I will see you next week for episode 54. Who knows where it will go? This week didn't exactly spark the direction I'm supposed to go in, so I'm going to go back to the virtual mailbag. Remember, you can always give me a show idea. You can reflect on a past episode, throw a question at me. Just go to send me a virtual email, aka, virtual letter email, to getinspired@mayakai.com is how you can send me a virtual letter to the mailbag. And you may pose a question that might be next week's episode, and or maybe I'll just come up with another topic based on as I'm reflecting on this episode. Either way, I will see you all next week. Remember, your future becomes your past, and your present is no more. So be well, stay safe, and always continue to be nothing short of amazing. Ciao.
Get inspired, get motivated with Maya Akai and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find Maya on Twitter and Instagram at Maya_Akai. on Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything Maya at MAYAAkai.com.